They told us Africa would never lead the digital future, that we were too poor, too fragmented, too late to the race of silicon and servers. They built the cloud but left us beneath it. They sold us software but owned our data. And when we dared to dream of sovereignty, they told us to stay in our place offline. But something is changing in the heart of the Sahel. In a land where dust once silenced code, young engineers are rising not to consume, but to create. In Ouagadougou, a new kind of power station has emerged not of coal, nor oil, but of servers, cables, and sovereign code. It's called PAC Digital, and it's more than just a tech project. It's a declaration that Burkina Faso will not be a digital colony, that Black nations have the right to control their own data, build their own operating systems, train their own coders, and defend their future in the battlefield of bytes. This is not science fiction. This is the revolution you were never meant to see. Stay with me, I'll show you how a landlocked nation is unlocking the digital frontier. This is PAC Digital. This is Liberation Rewired. To understand PAC Digital, we first need to understand the war we're in. Not the kind fought with guns or drones, but the silent kind fought with code, clouds, and control. In today's world, data is power, and those who control digital infrastructure control nations. Across Africa, over 90% of all internet traffic is routed through Europe or the United States. Emails, hospital records, tax files, even military documents travel thousands of miles, stored on foreign servers, scanned by algorithms we don't own, in jurisdictions we can't challenge. This isn't just inefficiency, it's vulnerability. It's a digital colonialism that's no less real than the empires of old. What does this look like? It looks like foreign tech giants controlling African elections through micro-targeted ads. It looks like entire school systems running on Google Classroom, with lesson plans and student data stored in California. And it looks like financial systems in Burkina Faso depending on foreign payment rails. Visa, SWIFT, MasterCard. At any moment, a political decision in Brussels or Washington could suspend a country's financial flow. This isn't hypothetical. When Russia invaded Ukraine, it was removed from the SWIFT banking system overnight. When the US sanctioned Venezuela, digital payment platforms and even Zoom education tools were shut down. And when Iranian scientists were targeted, Israeli cyber weapons like Pegasus infiltrated their devices, exposing their every move before they were assassinated. Digital dependence is not neutral, it is a weapon. And where is Africa in this global equation? Mostly observing, consuming, not coding, not producing, not protecting. The infrastructure isn't ours. The software isn't ours. Even the rules of cyberspace are not written in our languages, nor our interests. Across the continent, ministries of health, education, and defense run on licensed Western software. If those licenses are revoked, systems go dark. If those systems are hacked, there's little recourse. And the irony, African nations pay millions each year to access the very tools that track them, surveil them, and control their futures. This is not sovereignty. This is digital captivity. Just as in the 19th century, a new scramble is underway. But this time, it's not for gold, or rubber, or oil. It's for data, networks, and influence. China builds the hardware. The U.S. dominates the software. Europe governs the standards. Russia supplies the hackers. And Africa supplies the users and the silence. But something is shifting. In a small, landlocked nation in the Sahel, a government has refused to remain silent. They've decided that digital sovereignty isn't a luxury, it's a matter of survival. And that's where the story of PAC Digital begins. Before the birth of PAC Digital, Burkina Faso's digital infrastructure was not just underdeveloped, it was exposed. Like many nations across West Africa, the country relied heavily on foreign-designed systems to run its ministries, hospitals, and schools, from tax records to school databases. Most of the nation's critical data was stored in systems created abroad, hosted abroad, and updated from abroad. The Ministry of Health used software developed in France. The education sector operated on platforms licensed from former colonial partners. Even the military's internal communications, at times, depended on technologies not built within Burkina's borders. This created not just a technological dependency, but a national security risk. If those systems failed, or worse, were revoked, Burkina Faso could lose access to vital services overnight. The government had no control over source codes. Updates came on foreign schedules.
And cybersecurity protocols were dictated by vendors with little incentive to prioritize African sovereignty. The country's data didn't sleep on its own soil, and the people who could protect that data, the engineers, developers, analysts, were few and far between. For years, Burkina Faso suffered a brain drain in the tech sector. Talented youth, trained locally or abroad, often left in search of better pay, faster internet, and stronger infrastructure in Europe or the Gulf. Those who stayed faced underfunded programs, outdated equipment, and limited career prospects. This left the nation digitally exposed not only to cyber attacks, but also to economic manipulation. Its financial institutions were tethered to platforms beyond its jurisdiction. Its communication networks routed through international hubs. Its digital education tools came with terms of service in foreign languages, and data policies written for someone else's benefit. Perhaps most dangerously, the country lacked a national data center. This meant that everything from government payroll systems to public health records was effectively floating in the cloud, but controlled by someone else's weather. Burkina Faso had no sovereign cloud infrastructure, no independent internet exchange points, and no unified digital strategy to reduce its reliance on imported systems. As the world moved rapidly into a digital-first economy, where artificial intelligence, blockchain, and smart infrastructure began defining national competitiveness, Burkina Faso risked being locked out of the future, not because of lack of talent or will, but because of the absence of a sovereign digital backbone. This was the moment of reckoning. The question hanging over the capital wasn't just, how do we modernize, but how do we survive in a world where data is currency, and we don't mint our own? That's the question President Ibrahim Traoré chose to answer.
And the answer was PAC Digital. In times of disruption, leadership matters. When President Ibrahim Traoré came to power, he inherited a nation under siege not only from armed groups in the Sahel, but from silent forces in the digital realm. Foreign powers controlled the tools his government used to govern. International corporations owned the pipelines through which citizens communicated, learned, and traded. Data sovereignty was not even a topic in public discourse. It was an invisible absence. But Traoré saw what others overlooked. He understood that sovereignty in the 21st century would not be defined by borders alone, but by bandwidth. That in a world shaped by code, no revolution could last if it ran on someone else's software, and no nation could be truly free if its data lived in someone else's cloud. Where others saw technology as neutral, Traoré saw a battlefield. Where others outsourced, he called for self-reliance. And where others settled for dependency, he chose defiance. PAC Digital was born from this vision. More than just a modernization effort, it was a political statement, a break from the digital dependency that had plagued post-colonial states for decades. Under Traoré's direction, the Burkinabe government moved swiftly to draft a national digital sovereignty charter, outlining the rights of citizens to own, protect, and control their data. This was not written in legalese borrowed from Europe, but in the language of liberation. With his backing, a coalition of local engineers, educators, military cyber specialists, and Pan-African technologists came together to build Burkina Faso's first sovereign digital infrastructure. They weren't given billion-dollar budgets or Silicon Valley mentors, but what they lacked in capital, they made up for in clarity of purpose.
Traoré made digital independence a national priority equal to food sovereignty and territorial security.
He didn't see these as separate fronts, but as parts of the same war for dignity. "We can't protect our land," he declared in a televised address, "if we cannot protect our networks, and we cannot protect our people, if we do not protect their data." This wasn't just rhetoric. He personally oversaw the launch of Burkina Faso's first national data center in Ouagadougou, built with local labor and secured by locally trained cybersecurity teams. He restructured the Ministry of Digital Transformation, ensuring it reported directly to the presidency. He ordered government institutions to begin migrating from foreign-owned platforms to open-source alternatives developed inside the country. More importantly, he championed the youth. Through the PAC Digital initiative, Traoré established coding academies in every regional capital, with a special focus on recruiting girls and rural youth. These weren't just training programs, they were political education hubs, where students learned not just how to code, but why it mattered. They studied not only Python, but Patrice Lumumba. They learned not only how to build software, but how software had been used to exploit and surveil their people. For Traoré, PAC Digital was not just about innovation, it was about imagination. He imagined a Burkina Faso where teachers used apps built by their own former students, where farmers received climate updates from servers hosted on their own land, where the government encrypted its communications without needing foreign permission, and where African tech workers no longer fled to Paris or Berlin, but helped build the digital future in Bobo Dioulasso, in Kaya, in Banfora. In doing so, he planted a seed not just of software, but of sovereignty. PAC Digital is that seed taking root. In less than 2 years since its launch, PAC Digital has turned bold vision into concrete results. What began as a political statement has become a functioning ecosystem, one that is already shifting the balance of digital power in West Africa. The most visible achievement is the Ouagadougou National Data Center, a high-security, solar-powered facility built with local labor and secured by Burkinabe cybersecurity teams. It now houses the digital backbone of the government civil registry, healthcare systems, public payroll, land records, and educational data. What used to be hosted on servers in France or stored in third-party foreign clouds now rests firmly on Burkinabe soil. This alone puts Burkina Faso ahead of most of its neighbors. In Mali, key databases are still dependent on French hosting providers. In Côte d'Ivoire, major ministries continue using proprietary software licensed from European vendors. But Burkina Faso, despite being under economic sanctions and foreign media pressure, has quietly built a sovereign digital fort. That sovereignty is not just institutional, it's also generational. Through the PAC Digital Hub network, Burkina Faso has trained over 1,000 young developers, engineers, and digital security specialists since 2023. Coding academies now operate in all 13 regions, offering programs in French, Muré, and Dioula. Youth in rural provinces who previously had to migrate to the capital or abroad for digital education can now learn to code, manage networks, and build software from their own communities. More than half of these trainees are women, in a region where girls' access to STEM education is among the lowest globally. This is revolutionary. PAC Digital scholarships target rural girls specifically, and the program's motto, Build Local. Think Global is becoming a quiet anthem among a new class of African technologists. And these technologists are already building. Burkinabe developers have created a suite of open-source government applications now deployed across ministries. A national ID verification platform accessible to remote health clinics via SMS. A school management system that allows parents in villages to check grades on basic feature phones. An agriculture app that gives farmers daily weather reports, market prices, and planting advice available in 5 local languages. A secure internal messaging system for government offices, replacing vulnerable third-party apps. None of these systems rely on foreign APIs. None require monthly payments to Silicon Valley. None are subject to remote deactivation by a Western corporation. Perhaps most impressively, these systems are being exported. In a rare reversal of historical patterns, Burkina Faso is now providing digital consulting and tech training to Mali and Niger, helping them build their own sovereignty-oriented digital frameworks. Talks are underway to create a Sahel digital union, where member states can share infrastructure, co-develop software, and route data through regional internet exchange points, reducing dependence on Europe. All of this has been achieved with minimal outside funding, no World Bank grants, no USAID partnerships, no Silicon Valley philanthropy. Instead, PAC Digital runs on a mix of domestic budget reallocations, diaspora investments, and partnerships with politically aligned nations, most notably Iran, Algeria, and Venezuela. Engineers from Cuba and South Africa have participated in exchange programs. The result is not just a functioning digital ecosystem, but a political model for resistance and resilience. Burkina Faso, once considered a peripheral, landlocked state, is now at the forefront of Africa's digital sovereignty movement. While others hold conferences, Traoré's government builds servers, while others debate ethics. Burkinabe youth write code. And while powerful nations warn of digital isolation, the people of Burkina Faso are experiencing something different: digital independence. It is still early. There is much more to build. But already, PAC Digital has proven that Africa doesn't have to wait. It can lead. No revolution goes unanswered. As Burkina Faso began asserting digital sovereignty through PAC Digital, it did not go unnoticed. For some in the global north, this young nation's ambitions were viewed not as innovation, but as insubordination. Within months of launching its national data center, Burkina Faso began experiencing a dramatic increase in cyber attacks. Government officials reported waves of phishing attempts, server slowdowns, and unexplained outages, most of which targeted ministries using locally developed software. While no state actor claimed responsibility, the tactics bore resemblance to known Western intelligence cyber tools, including those used by the Five Eyes Alliance. At one point, the Ministry of Telecommunications traced malicious IP traffic to a foreign embassy compound in Ouagadougou. The breach was downplayed in Western media, but not inside the Burkinabe firewall. Security officials now refer to it as the Digital Embassy Incident. And the pressure wasn't just digital, it was diplomatic. Burkina Faso's pivot away from French-aligned tech platforms triggered quiet but forceful responses. Licensing restrictions were tightened. Update schedules for critical imported software were delayed. Certain open-source collaboration platforms, previously unrestricted, suddenly flagged Burkinabe developers for compliance review. Several young coders lost access to GitHub accounts and email services hosted in the US, with no clear explanation. The message was subtle but clear. Build your own system, and we'll remind you who still owns the gate. PAC Digital's insistence on using local encryption protocols also raised alarms. A leaked memo from a Western intelligence advisory group described Burkina Faso's system as opaque and non-cooperative, citing concerns about unverifiable activity and regional contagion. In diplomatic language, this is the modern equivalent of calling someone a rogue state. And yet these concerns are not technical. They are ideological. Western powers have grown comfortable with data asymmetry, extracting information from African nations while offering services in return. It is a relationship built on control, not partnership. PAC Digital flips that script, and for many in Brussels and Washington, that is deeply unsettling. But Burkina Faso is not alone in this storm. Leaders in Mali and Niger, observing Traoré's strategy, have begun to echo the call for digital self-determination. The alliance is not just military or political, it is now digital. Together, they are developing protocols to create a Sahelian internet exchange, cutting reliance on European infrastructure. The effort is still early, but it signals something dangerous for those invested in Africa's continued dependency. A region thinking for itself.
In response, disinformation campaigns have escalated. French-language media outlets funded by foreign NGOs have accused PAC Digital of fostering isolationism, technological regression, and even cyber authoritarianism. But on the ground, the reality is the opposite. Citizens have faster access to government services, fewer outages, and more job opportunities in the digital sector than ever before. Burkina Faso is not turning inward, it's turning sovereign. And sovereignty, in a world where information is power, will always be seen as a threat to those who benefit from imbalance. The digital war may not make headlines, but make no mistake, it is being waged. And in this silent war, PAC Digital is both shield and sword. In the quiet classrooms of Bobo Dioulasso, where sunlight filters through open shutters onto old chalkboards now replaced by solar-powered tablets, something extraordinary is happening. Children who once learned by rote from colonial textbooks are now building their own apps, learning not just to use technology, but to shape it. This is the future President Traoré envisioned. And it's not just for Burkina Faso. From the very beginning, PAC Digital was not designed as a national firewall. It was designed as a Pan-African spark, a starting point for something far greater, the collective emancipation of African minds through digital sovereignty. While global institutions continue to treat Africa as a market to be mined, Traoré treats Africa as a mind to be awakened. His message to young Africans is simple but radical. You don't have to migrate to build. You don't have to borrow to innovate. And you don't have to ask permission to be free. Under his leadership, Burkina Faso is becoming a laboratory of liberation, a country once dismissed as marginal, now serving as a blueprint. Delegations from Mali, Niger, Guinea, and even the Democratic Republic of Congo have toured PAC Digital sites. They come not just for technical knowledge, but to witness something rarely seen in African politics, a head of state betting everything on his people's potential. And young Africans are responding. From Abidjan to Bamako, from Lusaka to Kigali. A quiet network of Pan-African coders is forming. They share source code, swap encryption strategies, translate software into local dialects, and build platforms for farmers, educators, midwives not from templates in California, but from needs in Cotonou. PAC Digital has become their flag, and Traoré, their unexpected standard-bearer. This movement isn't about bandwidth, it's about belonging. It's about reclaiming not just land, but language, logic, and leadership. It's about imagining a future where African knowledge is stored not in foreign vaults, but in African clouds, protected by African firewalls, and driven by African dreams. And this is only the beginning. As more countries join this digital awakening, Burkina Faso's role will shift from pioneer to partner. And Traoré's legacy will not be just about what he built, but what he inspired others to build. A new Africa is booting up. And its first line of code was written in Ouagadougou. The world often asks Africa to wait. Wait for investment. Wait for infrastructure. Wait for permission. Wait for the right conditions. But in Ouagadougou, a generation stopped waiting. They picked up keyboards instead of slogans. They wrote code instead of petitions. They built servers instead of just stories. And in doing so, they changed the question, not, can Africa catch up? But what if Africa leads PAC Digital is not perfect? It lacks funding. It faces sabotage. Its builders work without Silicon Valley perks or New York headlines. But it is real, and it is working. And more than that, it is ours. To the diaspora watching this from Atlanta, from Brixton, from Paris, from Toronto. You who build software for billionaires, encrypt data for banks, train models for machines. Your skills were never meant only to serve capital. They were meant to serve your people. Come home not just physically, but politically. Come home to the mission. Burkina Faso is not asking for charity. It is offering purpose, a role in rewriting the future,
A chance to stand where you've never been allowed to stand before in power, on your terms. President Traoré is doing his part. The youth are doing theirs. The question is, will we do ours? This is not just about digital tools. This is about dignity, about whether black nations get to define themselves in the century to come or be defined by others again. PAC Digital is a beginning, but it needs builders. It needs believers. It needs you. Because if we don't code our freedom, someone else will code our chains.